Hey, Brooke. Okay, I'm going through your reading here. Got through the hard part of getting the basic shape and the details of the face. That's cool. And I actually really enjoying I love this process. I really do. I think it's such great practice, yielding wonderful results. That will be, depending on your engagement with the assignment, I think that it quite possibly could yield portfolio worthy outcome. And that's, of course, what we're shooting for in any class is to have a tangible piece for which you can include in your student portfolio. So working hard in this flat avatar illustration is relevant to showing your prowess in illustration because the flat illustrative process is one that doesn't use a whole lot of digital techniques, so to speak. So we're not looking at any raster techniques like drop shadows or manipulated cast shadows, or especially gradients. So it's very relevant in preserving a kind of a traditional um, uh, technique in illustration. And again, that's relevant because as you're working as a designer, when you're illustrating for any specific project, depending on the content of the project, you may want to stay completely away from any kind of highly digital techniques like raster effects, like drop shadows and gradients. An example I can think of is let's say you get hired or commissioned to do illustrations for something that is promoting a natural make natural foods or something, where a highly digital technique wouldn't conceptually fit with the subject matter. Does that make sense? So, and that's why this is relevant. So that said, you're saying you're continuing saying that you're having a little bit of a hard time with the flat portion of the assignment, still working on how to do shading. You're in luck here because I got some really great resources here. Let's go ahead and get to that. Let's go ahead and take a look at your work. I think it's a really good start. I think there's some things here that are just working up here. I would have liked to have seen the actual image next to this so we could compare and contrast, but it looks like a fantastic start. Little things like this, that little neck shadow right there, that adds an enormous amount of depth and dimension. So that's great. It's a great start right there for your shadow and highlight. One thing I'm noticing, and one thing that in this technique that you will notice is that there are going to be times during this process that you will be required to take artistic license, so to speak. So take some liberties with the actual illustration. What I mean here is that, okay, so quite possibly you may have just really depicted this eyelash right here as a very realistic depiction of what you saw in the image. However, when we look at this illustration, we can clearly see that it's a little lopsided. This is so much heavier, and it has a lot more visual weight than this eye. So that said, it draws attention to itself because it's a little bit of an anomaly, right? And we don't want that. We want things to work in concert with one another. So we don't want any specific area to stand out. And that's what I was talking before about taking some artistic liberties and maybe changing that area to get a little bit more consistency in the presentation of the eyes. Does that make sense? And again, I'm talking about those really heavy eyelashes right there. These look great. These look really super heavy. So we talked about it's a great start. There's no question. It's a beautiful start. One of the things I would recommend from here is well, I'm going to show you some of those techniques for shading and highlight. But before I do that, I kind of wish we would have had a chance to see more here because we want to take a look at the way that each of the illustrations consumes the actual picture plane. So being a series, you want consistency. And the best way to describe that is each one of the figures, each one of the subjects in this series should appear as though they're the same focal distance from on the same focal plane, the same distance from the camera, so to speak. So that would say that each one of these portraits would consume about the same area within the picture plane of the postage stamp. Does that make sense? If not, let me know because I'll need to clarify because it's really, really important to preserve the consistency in the series. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to show you some really fantastic assets and resources to show you and really describe in great detail how to add these shadow highlight areas. And to do so, they're all in the class. There's a couple of them are just a little bit Difficult. Okay, so first thing I want to do is come down here. Week 6 begin stage for the postage stamp. Down here we have the, remember this with Will Smith. That's a great example, by the way. That is exactly what we're after. That kind of technique right there. So we come over here, we see, and there's that same technique again. Right here, this little link right here, Flat Avatar Illustrated Portrait Tutorial, takes us to this. Did you see this? This kind, a lot of students seem to miss this link, but it's this old guy. And it's a really fantastic tutorial here. So you want to view that, and then I'm going to ask you to go back to the announcements area, go way back to week 3. Remember this announcement with color? We were talking about color. Type in color, and then down here I've added some resources here to keep all of this shadow and highlight together. But go back to week 3 announcement, and you'll note here's a tutorial regarding creating shadow and highlight to areas. Here's another shading and coloring in vector illustrations. Here's 6 more. These are all videos showing shadow and highlight techniques. Then here's 2 more wonderful tutorials. And then, of course, if we go to the course assets right here, and this is the Iconic American Entertainers Continue. This Maryland example shows it's a great way to set up your hard lines and your line work and your basic shapes. But this one doesn't show a whole lot of shading techniques, with the exception of the neck and these contour lines on the neck. So you can see that definitely adds a lot of depth and dimension. The hair as well. So the final product looks like this. So we've got this wonderful technique in the hair, and then we've got this shadow. I'd like to see more detail in the shadow highlight areas within the face, as we see here. So we've got a lot of shadow highlight areas in here, and then here's another 3 more tutorials here on the same process. So yes, so my only comment really from here is to really start. It's going to push this assignment over the top, is this depiction of shadow and highlight, and this establishing depiction of the tonal range based on the facial characteristics of the subject. And what that's going to do is that's going to create this kind of this volumetric look at the face itself. In other words, you've got depth, dimension, and volume depicted in a flat avatar depicted by various value changes in the parent hue associated with the skin tone. Okay, so keep that in mind. I guess theoretically what I'm saying is this should be the same parent hue as this shadow right here in the neck. However, this should be of greater, the value here should be much darker, right? And that points to good consistency. All right, so I hope my comments made sense. But that's what I have for you. So if you have any questions at all, please let me know. But I'm certainly looking forward to seeing this. If you want to run anything by me between now and whatever, I'm here. I'm in every day, right? So if you want me to look at something, if you get further progress here, and you want me to take a look, I'll be more than glad to provide additional comments. All right. So if you're working, I'm working. That's my student promise, right? Thank you very much. And again, it's really important to get with me if you have any questions. Thank you very much.